What's up, everyone? It's your girl Shay here on my channel. If you're new, welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. And I am basically going to be doing pretty much a part 2 or an updated video, where in my previous video a few weeks back I had talked about Crunchyroll and how they were leaning more towards in-house recording. Now at that time it was just alleged that they were going to do this, but now currently it has now been confirmed that they are going to be leaning more towards in-house recording. Now, when I talked about in that previous video, it was pretty much about the fact of like unions and how they work and how a lot of voice actors don't get paid a whole lot of money as well, and pretty much how, you know, if they're under a union like SAG or AFTRA, there's actually a lot that goes into it as far as like they have to be paid a minimum wage, they have to have health insurance, and at this time the only company for voice acting that has like a union is Netflix. Crunchyroll and Funimation do not have this. And it has been duly noted, as in from a lot of other voice actors that have done panels and stuff like that, that most of Texas's voice acting jobs are all non-union. So everyone gets paid pretty much the same exact rate, and it's actually a pretty low rate as well. And a lot of voice actors have talked about how the consistency in finding voice acting work is kind of far and few between. But a lot of this has kind of changed during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, as many of us know, we were all stuck inside. We weren't able to go to work, and a lot of work moved from being in office to being mostly remote, unless you had a job that was considered essential where you had to go into the office. And these were things like anything that was service provided, like food, hospitals, so on and so forth, the grocery stores. You guys know pretty much what I mean. But now Crunchyroll is pretty much saying that all their work has to be done in-house. So because of this, it is causing where a lot of voice actors who were actually hired who do not live in Texas are now either being recasted, or they're having to move, or so on and so forth, due to, you know, pretty much Crunchyroll wanting to do this for all of their dubs. Now, I am in a weird state as far as like how I completely feel about this, because I'm not a voice actor. I do not do voice acting, but I do kind of see where Crunchyroll is kind of coming from, although I don't completely agree with it. I don't agree with the fact of them recasting people who have already been casted in shows, especially shows that have multiple seasons, and especially them mostly just recasting due to the fact that this person decides to live outside of Texas, because of the simple fact that you knew this from the beginning. Now, I don't know if at any point in time when they hired the voice actor, did they tell them, hey, there's a potential for us moving to doing more in-house productions, so please be ready to move, or look to see if you will be able to move to Texas, because there are some jobs that have done that with people whom they have hired outside of the state where they are originally headquartered at. So I don't know if that was in their contract or if they talked to them about this beforehand, but a lot of voice actors are very upset about this. They're also upset about the fact that there's no like mandates, there's nothing put into place as far as how to protect the voice actors from things like getting sick with COVID and so on and so forth. It's kind of like I'm not gonna say they just don't care, but I think because the world is opening up a little bit more, it's causing where a lot of jobs aren't putting a lot of these stipulations into place like how they would have if it would have been like at the beginning of the pandemic and what was actually happening at the time. Now, I do want to say though that Funimation has always been like this, as far as like mostly only working with voice actors who live within Texas. And that was something that I remember years ago, was that if you wanted to work for Funimation, if you wanted to be a voice actor for Funimation, you had to live within the vicinity of Texas. That was where you had to live. Now, there were some voice actors that mostly did live in LA, but they got their start in Texas and got their start with Funimation. And I believe that because they had built such a reputation with Funimation, that they were able to you know, fly in and out of Texas if needed for them to record stuff. But if you were someone that was very new, you kind of had to live in Texas. So now, once again, while I don't agree with the fact that they're like, we're only going to hire people that live in Texas, this is also no different from what they used to do before, because Funimation used to always only hire people that live in Texas. And to be completely honest, a majority of jobs only would really hire someone if they live within that state or lived super close to that, unless they had the incentive of actually moving because they wanted someone who was close by. Now, I do know with things like the pandemic and all this happening, that has kind of changed. The original job model of you having to live close to your job has changed. So many people got hired that lived out of state or lived further away because everything was so remote. And this whole pandemic actually proved or showed that a lot of jobs could be worked from home and didn't actually have to be worked within the office. So that's why it's so weird that it feels like Crunchyroll or Funimation, mostly Crunchyroll, is trying to go back to the old model when due to the pandemic, it turned everything on its head, which has caused, the old model to kind of go out the window and to kind of pretty much have this new model. Now, Crunchyroll has gone forward to actually state that the reason why they want to push for more in studio as far as recording is concerned is due to the fact that when it comes to the sound engineers, I believe they're saying a lot more work is going into that due to the fact that not everyone has the greatest setup when it comes to recording. So the sound kind of sounds different. And I can understand that aspect because as many of us know, if you live with other people, or if you don't have like something completely soundproof, it could be very difficult to record. And if you're working on something like a show, like any sort of show where voice acting is involved, you have to make sure your sound is crystal clear, and you don't want to put that much work on the sound engineers. Now, I know the sound engineers are there for a reason, but it's different working with audio when you're in-house and you're like having to finagle and make everything sound great, and then taking someone's recording that they recorded at home, working with it wherever you are and trying to make it all sound the same so that there's not like this weird echo for one person or this one person sounds really weird. So that's pretty much just what I'm pretty much saying. Now, I'm not saying that Crunchyroll is right for this. Once again, I'm just trying to give people a perspective on probably where Crunchyroll is pretty much coming from and where I can understand what they pretty much mean. But once again, I don't completely really agree with what they are doing, especially because also some voice actors have came forward and have kind of said like, hey, some of us have, like autoimmune diseases, some of us have issues with our health, and them not putting anything in place and forcing people to come in might aggravate those issues and also might, of course, cause spikes and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's pretty much that. Pretty much, I also will, of course, link the article below from Anime News Network if you want to read the article yourself. There's a lot more other tidbits in there that I probably won't discuss or probably won't talk about or may have forgotten to talk about. So yeah, definitely read the article. But there was a Q&A where people actually asked like the coalition, which is CODA, CODA. In another video, I did talk about what it pretty much meant, but they pretty much asked them like, could they force, Funimation and Crunchyroll and stuff like that? And they can't. They can't force them to do anything. At that point, it's kind of on the voice actors to kind of make a stand and kind of force these changes to happen by them either not taking the jobs or them asking for more or making them want to become unionized. And when that happens, then of course they will be union. But at this point, from what SAG and AFTRA and what CODA is saying, is that at this point it is in the voice actors' court to try and make these changes happen, pretty much. Now, my own personal thoughts on this, as far as like just my own personal thoughts, I guess you could say, is number one, I wish that they would let people who have already been hired for specific roles to just continue to record those roles and let them know like, hey, this is the last time you're going to record for this role for this season, and then we are going to recast you if they decide to make another season, because we can no longer, or we aren't going to be working with people who do not live in Texas. I don't agree with them recasting someone midway through. I feel like they should be able to finish recording out the season and then go on from there and let the voice actor make the decision of if they really like the role a lot to decide if they want to move to Texas or not. And if they can't or don't want to move to Texas, then at that point, yes, recast them. And I know some people might say, oh, that sounds really harsh, but let's be real. So many other voice actors have been recasted for several other different reasons, whether it's a controversy, whether it's because they've gotten older and can no longer voice the role, or if it's simply because of the fact that they are already voice acting in something else and there's a conflict with them being able to record this particular character. And half the time, many of us as fans never even know someone's been recasted until way later, or unless it like makes the news or whatever, but generally most of us don't know about recasting. And a lot of times, especially for dubs, they try to find a voice match so that we as the viewer don't realize that the voice actor itself has pretty much changed, you know? So that's one thing I wish or want Crunchyroll to pretty much do. Now, once again, I feel like Crunchyroll should both embrace what's happening and embrace that the whole work model as we used to know it has now completely changed, and embrace a lot of these new changes. But I also do understand that there are some things that need to be done in-house. So once again, like I said in another previous video, I feel like they should, if this makes sense, I hope this makes sense, that if you live in Texas, you should be able to record in-house. If you live in Texas. If you do not live in Texas, I feel like you should still be able to be casted in roles, but maybe you don't get casted in main character roles due to the fact that you do live out of state, and due to the fact that it might be a little bit more difficult when it comes to recording, and that it may be a little bit, you know, sound differently if you also do not have the best setup. And maybe also a great way that Crunchyroll could do this too is for people to send in a sample of what their setup sounds like and see if it would be very difficult to work with to make it sound in-house, so that if you have a really bad setup, they don't hire you for that role, or they don't hire you at all, because they can simply say your setup is a mess and we can't spend that much money trying to make your sound as crisp and as clear as someone who is here recording in-house. So to me, that could also be a great way of where you're not excluding people who don't live in Texas, but you're also like making sure that if they do live outside of Texas, that they can live up to the standards that you pretty much need when it comes to producing or coming out with a particular show. You know, to me, there's just a lot of things that they can pretty much do. But at this point, it sounds like the voice actors are very upset about it. They have their, you know, reasonings for being upset. I completely understand where they are coming from. I completely understand that it is kind of, it sucks that now they're trying to make all these changes, all these roles, and in reality, you know, everything has now changed due to the pandemic and due to what has happened. So it's kind of like, Crunchyroll, go with the changes, but yes, maybe some things do keep it the same, but you have to be able to change with what has happened and realize that there is no going back to the old normal that it used to be when it came to recording, because everyone has pretty much showed that you can record these things from home, but also, you know, get with the new changes, see what can be kept that's old, and so on and so forth. Also within the article, they did say that the reason why they could be pushing for more in-house is because they did kind of up their studio, and the best way for people to use that studio is if they're coming in, because what's the point of revamping or remaking your studio if no one's going to use it? So yeah, there's that too. So there's a lot of different things regarding this entire situation. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree with Crunchyroll about this? Do you agree with Funimation about this? Although it seems to be mostly a Crunchyroll situation, not so much Funimation too much, even though they are both under the same exact company at this point, and they bought each other, or Funimation bought Crunchyroll, however you want to see it. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, of course, by commenting below. I have links below to all my social media accounts, my Instagram, my Twitter, and of course my TikTok, so feel free to follow me or subscribe on there if you like. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you haven't already. And like I always tell you guys, stay positive, stay nerdy, and in today's day and age, stay healthy, and of course, please stay safe. All right, you guys, bye.